Welcome back to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex. My co-host Anthony Rivardo here, talking about the big news the Giants just went through, firing offensive line coach Marc Colombo. Joe Judge, man, making another change, shaking things up. Apparently, it wasn't too good either. Colombo got into a verbal exchange with Judge over this situation that we're now dealing with. But before we dive into this and look at the facts, Anthony, my friend, how are you doing on this beautiful Wednesday?
I'm doing great. You might not think I am because I was a pretty big Marc Colombo fan heading into the season, but I'm just really excited to see Joe Judge take a hands-on approach with this team, which we're going to talk about a little more later. But really, man, this is another move by Joe Judge that just instills even more confidence in me. Makes me more proud to be the number one member of the Joe Judge fan club. And if you haven't joined the Joe Judge fan club yet, get on the train now. Get on the bottom floor, you know what I mean? Because we're going places with the Joe Judge fan club. Okay, subscribe to Fireside Giants to join the Joe Judge fan club.
Exactly. There you go. Subscribe to Fireside Giants. We have YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine, bringing you content on every single channel, much different things and giveaways, having a good time. But regardless, big news today. Marc Colombo, bam, gone out of nowhere. Good Morning Football America said apparently Joe Judge was taking some time during practice to actually allocate toward the offensive line. The reason is the offensive line was clearly struggling the first couple of weeks. Andrew Thomas's technique was completely off. Former offensive line coach Paul Alexander said he looks nothing like he did at Georgia. So Joe Judge said, you know what, I'm going to go spend some time there, see what's going on. This is something he learned from Belichick. Essentially, having the ability to coach every single position, it makes you a better head coach, and it allows you to understand the scheme and everything that much more in depth. So what he did was he went to Marc Colombo and was like, I'm going to tag along with you, help develop these guys. I think that Colombo wasn't doing a great job because the Giants went and said, we're going to go bring in Dave DeGugliemo, who actually had been the Giants' offensive line coach way back when in 2008. He had 4 straight playoff appearances with the Giants and won a Super Bowl. He spent time in New England with Bill Belichick, Joe Judge. I'm not sure about Patrick Graham, but Jerry Shuplinski as well, quarterback coach. And then he spent last year with Patrick Graham in Miami. So this is a guy that's very familiar with the Giants coaching staff, very familiar with what they're trying to do with this offensive line, and he fits the mold. It was actually between him and Marc Colombo. At the beginning of the season, the Giants were looking at both of them. Anthony has some more information on him, but this is a very interesting move. Apparently, the exchange between Joe Judge and Marc Colombo was not great because he did not want DeGugliemo to come in as a consultant. That was the big mix-up there. He got really angry apparently at Joe Judge, had a verbal communication there. I don't think it was in person. It might have been over the phone. But essentially, Joe Judge fired him on the spot, and bam, he's gone. He's out of a job now, kind of self-destruction. But now here we are with a new offensive line coach with a couple of weeks of progress with this line and a bunch of these individual players. So, where do we go from here, Anthony, and what is he bringing to this team?
Well, before I talk about Dave DeGugliemo, I want to, quickly touch on the timeline of what happened because I have this pulled up here. The Giants earlier this week were considering bringing in DeGugliemo in as a consultant with Colombo. Judge has been working closer with the offensive line over the past couple of weeks, as you mentioned, which is where I was saying the hands-on approach. I love to hear this, that Joe Judge is recognizing a weakness in his team, and he's going and he's trying to fix it. He's proactively going on his own to fix it. Like you said, it's a Belichickian thing to do, and I think it's encouraging to see Joe Judge take the best parts of Bill Belichick and apply them to his team. And then moving on in the timeline, the Giants were set to move forward with Colombo as the offensive line coach. He would have remained in his position, but they would have had DeGugliemo come in as a consultant. And then Colombo did not like that. His reaction was very poor, and then they fired him. But I also want to point out that the report of Colombo and Judge getting into a fistfight is completely false in every way. I think literally every single New Jersey beat writer has reported that it is false. So do not believe that if you read it anywhere. That is not true. So diving into DeGugliemo, as you mentioned, he was with the New York Giants when they won the Super Bowl 42 in 2008. The offensive line actually had a really solid year that year with Sean O'Hara and a couple other really good guys, Chris Snee, David Deal. Those guys were great. And one thing that I really like about DeGugliemo is his 2018 season. That's 10 years after the 2008 Super Bowl season, right?
Yep, 2
He
years
spent
ago.
some time in New England after that, but in 2018, the Indianapolis Colts in 2017 had the 25th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. In 2018, they had the 6th ranked offensive line. They were arguably the best in the league, depending on how you look at it. And the main additions that they had that offseason were Quentin Nelson and Dave DeGugliemo. Apparently, he stepped in, totally revamped the offensive line, and did an excellent job. So hopefully he can step into this New York Giants situation and do something similar.
Right, exactly. The Giants have Andrew Thomas at left tackle. He's had a bunch of issues, especially when it comes to getting beat inside. He's coming out of his stance too quickly. He's firing his punches too abruptly and not actually mirroring those pass rushers. He's had a lot of issues technically, and Colombo hasn't been able to fix those. And my major concern always was, he had good fundamentals at Georgia. How did he take such massive steps backward and lose these muscle memory, habits that he's created over the past few seasons with Georgia? Suddenly they're gone. Suddenly he's back to a raw prospect, and that's not what you want to see. So I'm hoping that DeGuglielmo can come in here and fix those issues, get him back to where he was. And we're seeing progress on this offensive line already. So hopefully he could just help build on that, help Joe Judge really push that line forward with Shane Lemieux as that trap guard. He's been doing really, really well moving to the other side in those power run schemes with the traps. But I really like it so far, what they've done the past 2 weeks. The Giants have had 2 consecutive games with 150-plus rushing yards. That's huge with Alfred Morris and Wayne Gallman. You can't ask for much better than that. And, this was obviously a surprise firing after those 2 weeks, but it seems like Joe Judge noticed that they needed more help. He actually went and started to help them. They saw improvement, and then they were like, we're going to bring in this new guy that they had already previously interviewed this past offseason, and they kind of just swapped, right? They kind of just swapped offensive line coaches. And I also agree with you. I had big hopes for Colombo, too. He had a very good pedigree, and people respected him. So I also think he was kind of a hothead. He was when he was a player, so I'm not surprised he went after Joe Judge. That was probably pretty interesting to see if he were in the room. I would wish I was a fly on the wall for that one. Again, no punches were thrown. It seems like it was just a verbal exchange, which is pretty good for the culture, I would say. A fist fight between your head coach and an offensive line coach is not what we need right now.
Right, especially if Joe Judge got his ass beat like that report indicated, but that would never happen. Joe Judge would handle that. He would handle that with ease. He's built different. Joe Judge is built different. Okay, but I also want to pull this up here because this is kind of an interesting stat, so maybe proceed with caution in your expectations with Dave DeGugliemo, right? In 2019, he was the offensive line coach for the Miami Dolphins. Now, what happened there was in July, just 4 days into training camp, the Dolphins dismissed offensive line coach Pat Flaherty and named DeGugliemo to the position. DeGugliemo had previously been hired as a team analyst, so he's elevated into that offensive line coach role after his 1 year with the Colts. He was with the Dolphins the year before that, so he went Dolphins, Colts, back to the Dolphins, which is kind of interesting. And, the Dolphins' offensive line was really bad last year, like ranked dead last entering the season, and then
really
exiting the season, they were dead last. So they were very bad, but that's also, they had a severe lack of talent.
They fired their guy, too.
Yeah, and they had a severe lack of talent on that offensive line. They made it a point to go draft some guys this offseason. And, he really didn't have a lot to work with. But another thing that I'll point out here is if you go and you look at Dave DeGuglielmo's career history, he's had a really tough time staying in one place. He has not been able to stay on a team for longer than a couple of seasons the past few years. Since 2016, he's been on a different team every single year, which is a little bit concerning. Like, why can't the guys stay put in one spot? That's really my main question with him. I think that it might have something to do with his personality. I think he's kind of a hard ass, but I do think that kind of fits in line with what Tom Coughlin was doing back in the day, with what Belichick was doing back when he had him, and kind of in line with what Joe Judge is doing now. But I don't expect him to undermine Joe Judge in any way. I expect Joe Judge to really continue to do what he's been doing and keeping this hands-on approach with the offensive line, because he recognizes how important it is for the offensive line to improve their play after they really struggled in the first quarter and a half of the season. So I'm very happy with this move, and I do think that Dave DeGugliemo will actually do a lot of good things with this team.
I agree, and maybe what you mentioned before, maybe he doesn't have the best personality when it comes to meshing with other coaches. That might be a big reason Colombo didn't want to work with him. Maybe he knows him, and he's just like, you know what, I don't want to work with this
It's
guy, so
possible.
I might as well get myself fired and go somewhere else. Or he could have just quit, I guess. But the reality is getting fired is better because he gets paid for it, a little severance package. Um, but you're looking at this from a realistic perspective, and you're right. He's moved around a lot, but he's also been part of some really big teams. We're looking at the Giants, 4 consecutive playoffs, and then a Super Bowl. He has 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots. He was there with Miami in 2011, I think, for when Reggie Bush had his first 1,000-yard season. He's worked with some very talented running backs and really set this offensive lineup for success in the past with some really good teams, and really got the most out of them. So we'll see how this goes. Obviously, there's a lot left to do. This offensive line is pretty much featuring 3 rookies right now with Matt Parrott, Thomas, and Lemieux, and then you have Nick Gates, who's a first-year center, and then you have Cam Fleming, who's probably just a one-and-done type of player this year, and then you have Kevin Zeitler, your veteran. So a lot left to do with this offensive line. I'm not totally upset with this move. I think you're really just swapping, offensive line coaches. Like, what else is there to really say about it? Joe Judge has obviously had his opinion on Colombo, and I think he just decided to move on from him based on him working with the unit himself and seeing what Colombo was teaching these guys. And I think he just realized that maybe he just wasn't the right fit for what he was trying to do with them. So, this was obviously a big surprise move, Anthony. And now we're sitting here like, who the hell is this DeGugliemo guy, and what is he offering this team? But I think that, the offense is making strides forward. I think he'll fit right in. And I think Judge is going to monitor this situation very, very closely. And again, it attests to his leadership, right? It really says a lot about Joe Judge and what he's looking to do with this team. If you don't fit his mold, you're out of there, So Joe Judge really, really throwing down the hammer, showing his authority off. And it seems like it was more him than it was Dave Gettleman, right? So maybe this is Joe Judge's team, not Dave Gettleman's team.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm happy you pointed that out, that this was a Joe Judge hiring and a Joe Judge firing. This was all Joe Judge. This is, we are seeing a head coach really take leadership and take control of this team. This is Joe Judge's team. This is not Dave Gettleman's team. This is completely Joe Judge's team, and I am all for that. I totally get behind that. I love Joe Judge and everything that he's done since he's gotten here. You just see the way that the players fight and the way that they improve week to week. Week-to-week improvement is the main thing. Joe Judge and this team have improved every single week. And another thing I'll point out with Dave DeGugliemo is a lot of familiarity. He had familiarity with Joe Judge, being that they both worked in New England. And I'll also point out that Patrick Graham was on the Miami Dolphins coaching staff last season, and there's also some familiarity there as well. So I'm sure that he could also attest to DeGuglielmo's character when Joe Judge brought up the idea of bringing him in. You have to keep in mind that Patrick Graham is the assistant head coach, so he probably has some say in a decision on the offensive side of the ball like this as well.
That's 100% true. And, just to wrap this up, Joe Judge already has experience with DeGugliemo. He knows him from his time with the Patriots. So does Jerry Shaplinski. These guys know who he is. He's going to fit in there like a glove for the most part. And obviously, he wouldn't bring in someone that would be, alienating himself from the rest of the coaching staff. So I think, this is a decision he made based on the progress of the offensive line. And that was really the lagging aspect, by the way. The defense has been playing out of their minds. The offense is taking significant steps forward, coming off 2 wins with no turnovers. And now you have the offensive line, which has been struggling a little bit in pass protection. The running game's been good, but pass protection has still been a little bit shaky at times. So now we're looking at this saying, okay, they obviously wanted to bring in someone with a little bit more experience than Colombo, and someone that has proven track record and has familiarity with the Giants system. I'm sure John Mara probably remembers him very, very well. So, these are guys that are familiar with the Giants, the current coaching staff, and some of the players, I'm sure. So I like this move. I'm not totally against it. Obviously, we had hopes for Colombo, but he's not a player. It's not like you're losing a draft pick, right? It's not like you're losing a first. The DeAndre Baker, you're not losing that. You're really just losing a coach who can be replaced by another guy. So I'm not totally like, oh, crap, this is a terrible situation. I'm like, okay, they're bringing in a guy that's experienced and has a ton of knowledge to give to this young offensive line who's trying to build, and he just did it with the Colts 2 years ago.
No, yeah, and another thing I'll point out before we wrap up is that, this is an offensive line that has struggled, and the Giants are not okay with the struggles. They're instantly trying to make that improve. They're trying to get this team better. You mentioned it earlier, Andrew Thomas. He really didn't look like the same player in the beginning part of the season. And why is that? There had to be some sort of issue with the offensive line coach and the coaching technique and all of that. So I do think that this will lead to improved offensive line play. We've seen it lead to improved offensive line play over the past couple of weeks once Joe Judge decided to step in and take this hands-on role. So I expect it to continue to get better, and I'm excited for that. I think that, we'll see more development from players like Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, and Matt Parrott, and I'm really excited for that. And all in all, while I'm disappointed that it didn't work out with Marc Colombo, I am excited to see the Giants make this move this early and not, kick the can down the road and have a, even stickier situation somewhere down the line. So I'm very happy to see them make this move early, and just really happy with Joe Judge. As always, I am the number one fan in the Joe Judge fan club, and I love the guy, and I will die on a hill for him.
All right, there you have it, Anthony, number one Joe Judge fan club member. Obviously, all are welcome, but nobody will take his spot. But again, thank you guys for joining Fireside Giants. Join the club. Join the Fireside Giants and the Joe Judge fan club. Both we coincide. We actually host both of them. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in to the Fireside Giants. Learn a little bit about this decision and what's going on behind the scenes, and we'll catch you guys next time.